Hey guys, what's going on? Happy Sunday and that. Basically, just want to do a quick rundown on what I'm looking at for the week ahead. So, keeping it short and quick because it's very self-explanatory from yesterday's video. If you haven't watched that, check it out. And yeah, just enjoy the video. So, essentially, I am looking at this as a channel to the upside and this as a corrective middle section. Obviously, it can dip out a little bit lower. What I'm really waiting for is a push out, push back in, clear continuation to move to the upside. Now, this may shape up this week, it may shape up into next week, it is what it is, but overall that's what I'm waiting for. And then if I get into the lower time frames, you can see that perhaps maybe even if we had a 3-touch or just a corrective squeeze to the downside and then we break out with a strong push up, moving above these areas and then creating continuation, I think that would make it very high probability, low risk, and that's what I'm really waiting for. And then obviously just putting that channel in there so you can kind of see it for what it is, but really and truly you can remove it and just look at it like that, but just understand that there is that level off that channel. S&P 500, to be honest, I'm not really going to over forecast on this. I think if you overthink it, it might get a little bit too tricky, but really and truly all we're just really looking at is that as the range, and then we just want to see how price responds to this, if it's going to continue to move higher, or if it turns into something a little bit deeper, then so be it. It is what it is, but it's one of those ones. JP225 I think is one of the most interesting ones. So as you can see, I didn't actually put any yen pairs on watch this week, but what I do tend to do is I do correlate and watch the JP225 quite closely. So if there is any major shifts in the market, I will be looking to take a position on the JP225 or on a related pair. Most likely New Zealand yen is my most preferred yen pair at the moment, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not too fussed with it. I do want to see more confirmation across the board, but from a JP225 perspective, it is looking pretty good for shorts. So I will be waiting to see how that develops. And then going into the top 6, so I've got Euro USD, which I think is very, very clear. We have a 1, 2, 3. Ideally, I'm looking for this to push above this level here, this ray line, push back in, give me a clear insurance entry, and we take the sequence to the downside. Otherwise, we could push even further up, and it could take a lot more time. You know, this could get corrective throughout the remainder of July, and then eventually create something larger as a reversal internal structure leading into that higher hook point. And then in August, we're ready to go. So I'm not too convinced with that. What I'm really doing is keeping it very simple. I just want to see it tap in, break above, push back in, give me an insurance entry. Same situation with the higher value area above. And then from those areas, I'll be looking for something a bit more weighted. So 4-hour confirmation followed by a 1-hour continuation is probably the most preferred entry. GU, very similar situation. However, I have got a shift bias. Now, as we know with the DXY on the weekly, as we saw yesterday, that there was strong bearish pressure. So what I'm going to be looking for is either continuation to the upside for the related pairs or a reversal. Most likely, you know, we could see more impulsive price action on GU opposed to EU, because GU seems like it has more of a run ahead of it, but more than likely they're very similar. I think it's just one of those ones where if we get push up, continuation, take it long. If we get push up, put straight back in, continuation, take it short. Very simple. And that's all you really need to wait for. If you're taking anything outside of this, then obviously that's something you need to really reevaluate. So EG is clear. As we're breaking these lows, we are moving to the downside. As we can see from a daily perspective, daily close was phenomenal, followed by the 1 hour. We can see that here clearer, that if we get continuation in these areas, that'll be perfect. It is through/below this low, so it'd still be valid, but this can still develop into something a little bit more complex because we are trading on the low. So I will be waiting to see how that comes, but ideally a 3-touch would be my most preferred entry. EA is another one. Covered this one yesterday, so I will be looking to take the insurance entry there. Obviously 10 pips on a retrace I think is more than enough, even if I took it in there, and I did get in with even 15. I think 15 is still perfect. And yeah, I don't think it will be pushing out that far ahead. It can, but I don't think it's fully necessary. But even so, you know, I don't think we should be forcing things in like this and over forecasting in that sense. I think that can really put you off. I think what we just need to really wait for is a clear push up, push back in, insurance entry. We get in with that. Perhaps we even get a 10 pip stop loss, which I think would be phenomenal on this pair. And then trading into the first low, which is here, you'd be looking at about 7 to 1, and then you'd be looking onwards to about 20 to 1. So EA is looking really good. GA likewise, I'd like to see more momentum on this one. So over the course of Monday, perhaps maybe Asian session, we get a drop off. Into London session, we get a continuation and we continue. And then we just get very impulsive price action into those lows. And there's a quick 10 to 1 in there if we do get that. GN looking for the long side. So I'm looking for that continuation to move higher. Essentially we are moving within this channel, which is very similar to what we're seeing on Euro USD, which is quite nice. And then nice thing about this one is we are below that low, and if we create continuation just below it, then we are building enough liquidity to potentially make that move and just push up higher through it, and then maybe even continue further. Obviously a bit more aggressive on the management as we approach these areas, but the great thing about it is I've got a 2.3 to 1 to manage off this range. Once we have the 3 touch, and then into that high I got 2.7, so I could probably just lock in too aggressively, and then if it does push through and go, then at least I'm in for a trade that could potentially turn into quite a big position. Going into the additional pairs, I've got Aussie US dollar. I think Aussie US dollar is very straightforward. Likewise with GU, if we do get more continuation to the upside because of whatever reason, price consolidates during Asian session into London session, perhaps maybe the entry shapes up a little bit later, then this particular pair might go sideways, but it gives us a structure to actually trade with. It's not my most preferred US dollar related pair, but it does make sense, and if we get that, then there's an easy run into the upside. Aussie New Zealand dollar, again another 3 touch structure, which is phenomenal. We're seeing it with EU, we're seeing it with GN, and now we're seeing it with AN as well, which is nice, where we're tapping into these areas. We've come in with a 1, 2, 3. Middle section is not the greatest, but it's there, and then now we just need to see if we create more deliberate price action to continue higher, or we get a solid push back in continuation and we can go short and start trading this as the sequence. If this is the one to the downside, then we can assume that it's going to be fairly impulsive, so we need to take that into account when we are looking for positioning, and it's not necessarily the smartest thing to be looking for much larger continuations. But in the sense of an hourly, I think that's perfect. You know, even something like this over here would be great. Obviously it's not going to be that clean, you have to bear that in mind. This is just for demonstration purposes, but that's where I'll be looking for the territory of the continuation. And then obviously Euro New Zealand, same situation, push up, continuation in these areas, and we go, and that's basically what I'm going to be looking for, is just that as the near miss, which is completely fine because we filled this, then we came up, we created continuation, there was actually continuation here as well, and now we're creating the next one, and then perhaps maybe we get the next leg into these areas, which we can manage for roughly around about 5-ish% into there, and then if it does go, it turns into a 10% trade. So once again, another great trade. I mean, you take trades like this where you have mostly 10 to 1s, even if you lost 3 trades, you know, you'd still be up 6% on one of them. So but the odds are, a lot of the time people don't have the patience to sit through this, and they lose 3 trades, they lose 3%, so they get aggressive, they lock in 3% here, and then what happens is price moves up, comes back in, tags them, they take that, they're still on break even on their account, and then later on what happens is price moves all the way up. So time and time again I faced that. Many people I've seen has also faced that, where they got in and out of a trade, mismanagement, this and that, but sometimes it's because you psychologically block yourself from basically experiencing the full trade. We can see here we have a hook point on your Aussie CAD. We've come in correctively, which is interesting. I just want to see a clear impulse out. I want to see us breaking those lows and then continuations below there to play the range. Obviously into this one again, we have roughly around about an 8 to 1, and then if we break into the next point down there, we've got about 11 to 1 and so forth. So this is still a very, very interesting trade area to trade in, because we can see that from a higher time frame perspective, if we are to sell from here for any reason and even come into these areas, this doesn't look like your typical larger flag territory anyway. It looks like, you know, correction into a bit more of a messier correction, into a correction, into more of an extension of a correction, taps into that liquidity. Perhaps maybe this could even turn into the run where we get a really interesting sequence to the downside. Obviously we're not going to be holding that for 40%, but it's there, we could get scale-ins and so forth, so it's one to just very keep close attention to. And then GBP CAD as well, likewise. This one is quite interesting because if you did draw in, you could probably find some sending channels and stuff in there, but really and truly we're not too focused on that right now. What we're looking at is we've broken that high, And now, because we've broken it impulsively and the 4 hours just very impulsive, the daily's impulsive, we just want to see more deliberate continuation. If we can get a clear 1, 2, 3 from this area, and we can take that even with 15, 16 pips into the next high point, which is over here, you've got a clear run for about 11 to 1. So again, there's another phenomenal position on board. And then if you look left, you can really see that there's nothing majorly significant stopping this from getting to that point over here. There's only this little price point here that you'd be wary of, but there'd be more than enough room to manage into that. Going into the extras, so these ones are fairly simple as well. You can see that we've broken all-time highs on Aussie 200. This looks phenomenal. We're coming in with strong bullish candles as well. There's a bit of wicking on it as well, but when we did identify this a bit closer, we could see that impulse correction, impulse correction, impulse, and now maybe we're getting something a little bit more steep, but more on the bull flag side of things, which actually correlates with a few of the other related indice pairs as well. So that's what I'm looking at. And then you can see same thing on Germany 40, where we're basically seeing the same thing, where we've got that high value area. This one's a little bit better because you have something to trade into, but we can see that even with this, you know, I would most probably just size that up like this and take it from here and say if that's from the break, probably looking at that as the price zone. So again, probably got a 5 to 1 to manage, but even so, this is not the best of quality trades. It's just if this shapes up, I wouldn't really hesitate on it, because many a times trading into high value areas isn't always the easiest, but some of these can really go now because we have the momentum across the board on these indices. So it's manageable, then I'll take it. But more so, I'm more interested in the Germany 40. I think the Germany 40 has more potential because we have that strong push. We're coming straight into these areas. I wouldn't be too worried about these areas, but I would be aware of them. But that's the most important area that I'm looking at to see how do we respond to the override. And then if we do get to it, you know, we're managing a 6 to 1 at that point. But then if it does push through and tries to complete for the completion of this larger structure, which is, I think, is highly probable, you know, you could be looking at something like a 15 to 20 to 1 and so forth. So that could turn into a really interesting position likewise. And then we have the last one but not least is US 30. So even though that we have the value area there and we've come in with a 1, 2, 3, we've broken above. But the most interesting thing is if I look at it over here on the 1 hour, you can see how we've completely broken above and then we've retraced back in. I'll just go to the daily so you can see that we've actually wicked through it, which is bearish. And then on the 4 hour, you can see this is quite nice because we've actually retraced 50% of it. So naturally we'd be looking on the 1 hour for a continuation here now. If I just refine it on the 15, I'd be looking for a clear 3 touch. So using that as the base, and then 1 comes back in, taps into it again, and then taps into it for the 3rd, and then probably get in there with stops above here, which I think would be more than fine. And then you could probably get in and then potentially scaling across the board. So that's basically it, summarized in a very quick way off the Sunday market breakdown of these pairs. So if you guys have any questions or anything that you wanted to point out or ask, feel free to drop me a message in the comments or drop me a message on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you. So guys, have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next one.